Sometimes the best move is staring you right in the face. It could be a fork, a pin, a double attack, but sometimes the best tactic isn't quite as obvious. And that brings us on to today's topic, the X-ray attack. X-ray attacks are absolutely fantastic because they make you think about the board in a different way, and you're massively rewarded by having a little bit extra board vision. So what are X-ray attacks? Well, just like in real life, a chess X-ray lets a piece control a square through another piece, specifically the opponent's piece. And because of this, the pressure from an X-ray can be totally camouflaged. Like, you might not even see it until that oh no kind of moment, you know? You think things are going well and then all of a sudden you realise that I think I've just lost this game. It is a real threat, but it's a real camouflaged hidden threat. So let's see it on the board. I'm sure a few years have probably already worked this basic example out. This is a mate in 3. I'm going to encourage people to pause as we go, but it's important to see for this tactic that we have the 3 pieces here and they are all bearing down on this f8. So the queen to the f8 coming in for the check. Yes, it's supported by the horsey here, but also we have this rook which is staring through the opponent's rook here and also indirectly supporting f8. Now, just to play this out, the rook would go ahead and take. Our rook can then come up, go for the check, king only has one move, and then we can come in for the checkmate. It's all about recognising that even when a piece seems safe behind a defender, like the king, if it's on the same line as one of your long-range pieces, like a rook, a bishop, a queen, there's a potential for an X-ray attack. And like I say, in this example, the rook is staring through the opponent's rook and still indirectly attacking that f8 square there. But let's step it up a notch. So this one's a little bit harder. This is also a mate in 3. Like I say, we're going to keep stepping it up as we go, getting more and more difficult. But once again, have a pause, have a think, and see if you can work it out. Now, if you remember what I said before, if a piece is on the same line as one of your long-range pieces, like a rook or a bishop, there is the potential for an X-ray attack. So how would this play out? So in this situation, white has the rook as a defender, directly blocking the path to the g1, but our rook on the e1 is still seeing that square through the defender. That's the X-ray vision, and because of this indirect control, what would look like a crazy move, the queen coming and popping in check on the f2 suddenly becomes an absolutely devastating checkmate on the back rank. Clearly, the rook cannot take because of this rook attacking through the defender. All they can do is just drop the king back to here. We can now buddy these guys up like so, popping the king into check. King can't take because of this. Rook has to take, and then we can go in quite happily for the checkmate. Now, that queen going in for the check on the f2 wouldn't be very obvious, but when we get on our X-ray glasses and just remember that this piece can see through there and these guys are teaming up together, it becomes a lot more obvious as you start to practice. But we've had a little look on the back rank, let's try out some diagonals. Alright, here we have example number 3. Once again, this is a mate in 3. This will be the last mate before we move on to some other tactical advantages, but I just think that this is a really cool example. Again, have a little pause, have a little think, and try and work it out. So, our bishop on the c3 has a clear line of sight through the bishop, to the horsey, and even somewhat all the way through to the king. Now we have our horsey situated here on the h6, and as you can see by the dots, it is covering this square here and this square here, so we know that the king can't move to any of those squares. Only square the king is able to move to is here on the g7. So because we are looking all the way through, we're also indirectly controlling this square here. That means we can go for this absolutely beautiful queen sacrifice. We now put the king in check. As we can see, we are covering all of these squares, and the king has nowhere to go to. The only move for black is for them to go take the queen, then our bishop can go ahead and take and go for the checkmate. Rook comes down, boom. Absolutely filthy. Right, this is an amazing example of how subtle and deceptive X-ray attacks can be. Again, have a pause, have a think, and try and work it out. This one is a bit more difficult. I'm going to assume you've done that. Now, this is a very sneaky one, but the bishop to the b5. Now, it looks like we are just giving up a bishop. We go ahead and take that b5 is clearly double defended by the pawn and the queen. So the queen can quite happily go ahead and take it. However, our queen on the g5 here can unleash the X-ray attack. This pawn isn't actually defending because we are staring through it to the rook on the a8, which will then be putting the king in check, and we will also be getting a material advantage. We were 1 point of material down here. Once the queen goes ahead and takes, we're 4 points of material down. But when our queen goes ahead and takes, putting the king in check, pawn takes back, and then we come up, take the rook. We now have a point of material advantage, 4.3 by the analysis bar, because this rook is now going to be causing all kinds of dramas on this back rank. We've got the rook on the back rank. Our other rook can get out onto any of the open files, come in, join in with this. Things are going to get absolutely disgusting for black. And that bishop to the b5 is not an obvious move, but it's using the power of the X-ray, looking through, working out, is this piece actually doing too much? And with moves like this, you can turn the tide of the game massively. Now for this example, it's a little bit different. We're not X-raying a piece, we're X-raying a square. So again, have a pause, have a think, and work it out. Now, the square we are X-raying is right here on the b1. The queen is staring through the other queen to this b1 here. We have the horsey ready to jump to here. We have the rook ready to jump to here if needed. So the best move is actually horsey coming, putting the king in check, and going for the fork. Now, clearly the queen can't take because we're just going to go ahead and take their queen, but actually that's probably their best move. If they try to do just say anything else, let's just say move the king to here, this is a completely losing position because horsey can jump and take the rook there. Are we giving up our queen? No. Because now we have the checkmate. This square's covered. All of this is covered. Absolutely devastating. The only way out of this from here will be to do something like pushing forwards the a3. But even this leads to a mate in 5. But then we can just quite happily go ahead and grab the queen there. Absolutely filthy play. All because we are realizing the power of what we have controlling this square. Jumping to there, force the king to move out of the way, and then just go and absolutely destroy the game. This one I absolutely adore. Let's have a little look at the position. At first glance, things seem okay for white. There's quite a lot of pressure going on this g6, like so. Things look relatively even, and there's nothing too fancy going on. However, the power of the X-ray attacks. This is such a disgusting one. What's the key square here? It is the d4. The bishop staring through the other bishop to the d4. Now, why is this so important? This d4, if we had a diagonal, we'd be staring down like so, putting the king into check. We also have our other bishop here, staring down here like so. Things are actually pretty spicy for white. So with a queen sacrifice, taking that pawn, giving herself up, our bishop comes across. Look at how we are attacking now. The only move is for the queen to come and try and block it. We take, he takes back. Then our rook can come up attacking like so on the king. King moves out the way and boom. Look at how white's position just crumpled from that one sacrifice. Absolutely brutal play. Oh, I love it. I love it so much.